Up next with us is a Georgia Republican who served in the Marine Corps, Congressman McCormick, who is also on the House Armed Services and Foreign Affairs Committee. So it's perfectly timed here to talk to you tonight. I wonder, do you agree that with what we just heard, that potentially the president is rushing into making an agreement that ultimately could hurt his legacy if he moves too quickly here?
Well, he's not making the agreement. It's the agreement between Russia and Ukraine that has to be done. He's trying to put pressure on both of them in different ways. They both have different motivations. We can make it very hard on Russia through sanctions, through supplying weapons to Ukraine, although that's up on the table right now. And for Ukraine, we can say, look, if we don't give you weapons, it's going to make it very hard for you to win this war or to even fight a defensive war. But quite frankly, we forget the part that Europe has to play in this too. Remember that Germany has an economy, a GDP that's 2.5 times the size of Russia. Combined, Europe has a GDP of about $27 trillion compared to Russia's $2 trillion. If Europe decides to get serious about this, they can make it very difficult on Russia militarily and economically. But the United States is still the big boy on the block, and we can make this very difficult for either country to continue this war.
Well, yeah, and the president said today that there is pressure on Russia, but we haven't seen sanctions or what you're talking about there. In terms of the end result here, do you consider Russia not taking over all of Ukraine a pretty big concession?
Well, so it really doesn't matter what I think. It matters what Ukraine thinks and what Russia thinks. When I start supposing, I could tell you exactly how I'd handle this, but that doesn't matter either. I'm not the commander in chief. What really matters is getting them to the table, trying to create that stability in that region. All of NATO's watching. The rest of the world is watching. China is watching when it comes to their position on Taiwan. We do have a tremendous amount of leverage in this, and we'll play our part, but we're not the only players. And ultimately, it's going to come down to Putin's ego and Ukraine's claim to their territory that they have historically. And I think this is going to be a very difficult negotiation, but we can facilitate it.
And sure, you're not the commander in chief, but you're a sitting lawmaker. You're on these committees that are incredibly relevant here. I mean, do you think that Putin views that as a huge concession, that he doesn't take over all of Ukraine?
Well, when it comes to Putin, he wants to keep the land he's already taken. I've said very publicly all along that I think Ukraine needs to be made whole. The 1994 agreement that we made when they gave their nuclear arms to Russia as part of the deal that we were supposed to actually come to their aid was something you sign an agreement, you honor it. NATO agrees, Great Britain, Russia signed that agreement. I think we could have made it almost impossible, Russia, by just supplying the right number of weapons, by putting massive sanctions on them. Combined, Europe and the United States has almost a $50 trillion economy versus Russia's $2. We could have ended this a long time ago. We talked to the European Supreme Allied Commander. He agreed with that. But once again, this isn't about, well, I mean, we haven't fought our wars very well either. Until we had surge capabilities in Iraq and Afghanistan, we as the world power did very poorly against untrained armies because we didn't go wholeheartedly in. This is not an easy question to answer.
It sounds like you think the United States should be maybe putting more pressure on Russia right now.
I do, but once again, I'm not the commander in chief. I'm not the sole negotiator. Matter of fact, I'm not even a negotiator. I've been on the NATO parliamentary system, and I've come to the table and seen a lot of people who care very much about this. You're seeing NATO building up their arms, doing their part. I'm excited about that portion, but we have a long ways to go before NATO is doing everything they've agreed to do.
Would you ever be comfortable with the United States formally recognizing Crimea as Russia's?
Personally, no. I don't think that that's a good thing because I don't like what Russia did to begin with. I don't think we should ever encourage a bad actor in something we've already negotiated previously. So no, not me personally, but once again, the world is watching and they'll make their own decisions.
Yeah, I just think when you look at that, given Russia illegally seized Crimea, we saw secretaries of state the last time Trump was in office say, it shows that they're not acting like a great nation. I mean, what do American citizens get out of the United States doing that if that ultimately happens here? Anything?
Well, the United States is really kind of on the sideline, but realize that Ukraine as a nation is a top 5 country in resources, whether it be titanium, iron, magnesium, aluminum. It's amazing how many, they have lithium, uranium, grain. They're incredibly wealthy if they were to develop it. So it could be a benefit to the entire European region as well as the United States as a trade partner. But quite frankly, the question is, what is the cost of peace? Ultimately, how many people are you willing to lose? When you're talking about Zelensky and his big decision, Are you going to be able to get out of this hole? I don't think so. There's going to have to be some concessions. That's just the reality of it. Whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not, is inconsequential. What is peace worth to you, and what are you willing to give up for that?
Yeah, but everyone keeps talking about the concessions Ukraine has to make and Zelensky has to make. It's very rare to hear what Putin, who invaded and is striking as he did last night, what he needs to do.
Yeah. Well, first thing he needs to do is stop killing people. Stop with the invasion, stop with the bombing. Let's start there. Once we get them to the table there, I don't think we want to give too many specifics because you want to have a little bit of wiggle room. Anytime you draw red lines in the sand, negotiations instantly break down. We don't want that. That's why President Trump was very clear to Zelensky, please don't poke the bear. We need to have as much wiggle room on both sides. And I understand your point. But I think Putin right now is a very proud man. He's done something that I think is egregious and evil. But we don't want to pin him down, so we make this negotiation even more difficult.
Yeah, I think some people would disagree with that he does it regardless of if they're poking the bear or not. Senator Bill Cassidy wrote today, he's a Republican, Putin doesn't want peace. He's stalled every negotiation and he keeps bombing civilians. Do you agree with him that Putin does not want peace here?
He sure hasn't indicated it so far. I don't think he wants to continue to antagonize all of Europe and the United States. And I think ultimately it will cause him to fail as a leader. It will cause Russia to fail as a state. But I think he's used to the meat grinder. He's used to sacrifice. You look at what they did in Afghanistan. Look what they've done historically. Look at the Gulag Archipelago with 60 million people dead. This country has a long-standing history of an abusive government with evil intent, killing lots of people. So I think that's the history of Russia. Unfortunately, until they get better leadership, it's going to continue.
Right. So then why reward Russia by letting them have Crimea and formally saying it's theirs? I mean, I think that's the confusion here is what Putin is doing is wrong, as you have yourself acknowledged multiple times here. Then isn't it just rewarding him and saying, actually, what you did, you got what you wanted here. You got more land. There's
ideal and then there's reality. And when you look at it, ideal, I would love to see Russia have never gone in there. We should have taken a harder stance to begin with. Europe should have been ready. They should have had NATO ready. Ukraine should have been ready. We warned them that this was going to happen and nobody prepared for it. Ideally, Biden would have been president and they wouldn't have invaded in the first place. But that's not the reality. And now we're stuck with what we have. And unfortunately, the reality is they're probably not going to get Crimea back. I wish they would, but I don't think that's reality. We have to have some sort of negotiation to stop the war. And I agree. I don't think Crimea should be given up, but I don't think it really matters what I think. It's matter what is peace worth to all countries involved. I think it does matter what you think. That's why we had you on. Congressman Rich McCormick, great to have you. Thanks for your time tonight. Thanks. Good night.